talking about getting your I-9 house in order. And excuse my voice, I have a little cold, but please bear with me. Wanted to touch initially on a few changes that we've seen so far and that we may continue to see going forward with the new administration. So the first issue is which of President Obama's executive actions which protected unauthorized aliens will be rolled back by President Trump. So far, he has said he's not going to address DACA, which is the work authorization for young people, people who came to the United States before the age of 16. So that's still in place. People can get those extended at the moment. There is going to be an increased emphasis on enforcement and compliance. The new president has ordered the hiring of 5,000 additional Border Patrol agents, and there's talk of maybe boosting that number to another 5,000 just in general enforcement in ICE, the enforcement arm of DHS. Yesterday, the day before, there were several executive orders issued by the president regarding building a wall on the southern border, securing the southern border. He has also temporarily suspended visas for people coming from several countries where there are security concerns, such as Iran, Iraq, Syria, Yemen, Somalia. He's also ordered that refugees start being reviewed more closely before they are permitted to come into the United States. We do expect that there will be stronger workplace enforcement coming. The issues I've mentioned to you so far are less concerned with employees, more concerned with immigration in general, but just good information for you to have. The areas where we may see your business is affected are, again, additional I-9 audits. It seems we're going back to a focus on identifying and apprehending and deporting people who don't have the proper authorization to be here. So one of the tools they have to do that is workplace audits. So we'll get to that a little bit later in the presentation. The other thing that may affect some of you is the president's promise to renegotiate parts of NAFTA. NAFTA is the treaty between the U.S., Mexico, and Canada, and it allows for a specific visa category, among other things, but the visa category is called the TN, or the Treaty National. So if any of you have used it, you know that it's relatively straightforward, especially on the Canadian side. So that we expect will probably remain intact. On the Mexican side, it may be rolled back or limited. So we need to keep our eyes out for that. The other thing that was discussed by the president, we haven't seen action on this yet, was making the H-1B visa category more restrictive. There are complaints and concerns about foreign workers undercutting U.S. wages. So we expect to see something in the next couple of months probably on new rules regarding how you qualify somebody for an H-1B, in addition to the current hurdles, of course. So there could be something like having to advertise the position, which we do in permanent resident cases, green card cases right now, but we don't do that currently for H-1Bs. So keep your eyes peeled for that, and I'm certain there's going to be more to come from the new administration on immigration. One more immediate focus area is the new I-9. So as you know, the old version of the I-9 form expired in March of last year. caused a little bit of panic, but immigration said, look, we don't have the new form ready. Keep using the one that's available on the website. So that was in use throughout 2016. At the end of 2016, they announced the revised version of Form I-9, and they said that you could start using it right away. You didn't have to, but it does need to be in place now. January 22nd, earlier this week, was the starting point for using the new I-9. To be clear, do not go back and redo I-9s for your current employees who have an I-9 on file. This is only to be used for new hires. Important point. But you should be using the new version of the form now. It is available on the DHS website if you simply do a search for new I-9. You don't have to pay for it, so don't get tricked by some of the websites out there saying, you know, on sale today, 99 cents per form. It's free. Don't use any of those private websites. Just go to the government website and get it, and you'll be all set. Okay. Issue regarding the number of unauthorized workers in the U.S. could be as high as 5% of the workforce. So again, this is an area ripe for enforcement. The new administration knows that a lot of these people are working, so they may be coming after them through your business. Few statistics here on the number of arrests, notices of inspection, final orders, and fines. 16 million in total. It's not a huge number when we consider that's over hundreds of companies, but it can have a strong effect on a business depending on whether you may have people that are identified as not having provided the proper documentation. And we'll talk about the fines here in just a sec. So the penalties for failure to maintain I-9s properly. Mostly what we're looking at is this middle row, the administrative sanctions. You may be familiar with the old fine schedule of $110 up to $1,100 per form. That was based on the percentage of forms that had errors. So remember, you may have a 100% legal workforce, but if your I-9 forms are deficient, you can still be fined for this paperwork violation. That schedule's gone up to 216 as the base, up to 2156. And then the hiring violations above that, those have also increased. So hiring violations can be an inadvertent but discriminatory practice, such as requiring specific documents from somebody rather than giving them the choice from the list of what to present. So I've had situations in the past where somebody has said, you know, I know so-and-so is a permanent resident, so I asked for his green card. Innocent enough assumption, he's got a green card, shouldn't he show it to me? Legally though, the answer is no. We have to give that person the choice of what documentation to present for the I-9. So the old I-9 you're familiar with, went from a one-page to a two-page. We'll go beyond that. New changes. It's a smart form or an e-form where the instructions are embedded in the form. There are validations to be sure that you've completed the information properly, so it should cut down on some of the errors. There is space to add additional information. We would write things in the margin or at the top if somebody had a name change, for example, through marriage, but now there's a space for that. And they're asking for other last names now. They're realizing that some people have hyphenated last names, so they want all other names used. The last point there is probably not that relevant, but in terms of additional spaces for multiple preparers or translators has been added. So embedded instructions on this slide, drop-down lists which are helpful in terms of the state, etc. Date of birth, you can now use this electronic piece rather than having to write it in there. Some people in different countries write dates differently, so this should help. Smart form has a button, if you see here, with the instructions on, what does this mean, the Social Security number. There's a note here regarding applying for a social. If somebody's applied for a social but hasn't received it yet, you may still put them on payroll. Just speak to your counsel about how to do that, and we would complete the I-9 based on other identification. Attestations can help. We've got some help here in terms of helping people figure out, which box they're supposed to check and what additional information they need to add. Excuse me. One of the key points regarding the new form is that you still have to print it out. It's not a full-scale electronic I-9 system in the sense that you fill in the information, have an electronic signature done, and then save it somewhere. The government form goes part of the way, but not all the way. So we can fill it out online, but then they still want you to print it out and sign and retain it yourself. There are software vendors out there you may be familiar with that offer a full-scale electronic I-9 platform where you would not have any paper signatures, you would not have any paper records, it would all be electronic. But for this system, you still print it out and maintain that record. Another fix here or helpful improvement of the form is avoiding errors, like putting in the wrong number. So a lot of times people say, well, what's my alien registration number? And so this drop down or this information box helps people to figure out, okay, which number in my passport are you looking for here? To the finish button, it will check and have you completed everything required. It won't let you go on to the next section until you have made sure that everything is fully completed. There's also a drop down in terms of section 2, the document selection, which should be helpful. What happened previously was sometimes we had the right information in the wrong list. So somebody put the driver's license under list A instead of under list B. This system is designed to help you make sure that when you've identified the document you have, it's going to go in the right list. That will reduce fines based on improper completion of the form. Additionally, as mentioned, drop-downs for states and issuing authority. Issuing authority is my pet peeve on the I-9. It's the field that I see blank most when I do reviews. It's sort of a throwaway in terms of you've got a Social Security card. Of course, it was issued by the Social Security Administration, but a lot of people sort of take a shortcut there and they don't actually write it in. And I've had clients be fined for that field being empty, even though it's sort of obvious where the Social Security card was issued. So this, again, is designed to prevent users from inadvertently omitting necessary information. Here's that new field I mentioned for additional information. So they have provided this so that it's a little bit neater on the form rather than writing in the margin regarding somebody who may be in a special status. As with some other immigration rules, there's always an exception. So somebody under temporary protected status, for example, they're not specifically mentioned in the I-9. This is like where you would mention this person's on TPS. F1 students with a STEM extension and similar E-Verify case numbers, that all can go in this this new section. As I mentioned, this is not an electronic I-9 per se. You do still need to print it out and retain it, and enter the data into E-Verify if you're using E-Verify. So it won't do a crosswalk, whereas if you're using one of the actual dedicated electronic I-9 platforms, it's just going to be another click of a button and it will run the case through E-Verify. Okay, so I have a few homework assignments for you. Chris Valentino mentioned that he likes to give people homework. In this area, 3 things I would say to do. One is check your I-9 process, record keeping process, to be sure that you're using the latest form. If not, get that implemented right away. Also, check your current records for completeness. As I mentioned, it doesn't matter, to one extent, it doesn't matter whether the employees are legal or not. Your paperwork is going to be the first source of fines that the government can issue. Unauthorized workers is obviously a separate issue which needs to be addressed, but your paperwork has to be completed properly to avoid fines. And as mentioned, we're going to expect more enforcement there. The third thing is sometimes there's a question of when do we re-verify? Re-verification is an important part of the I-9. You'd think that a foreign employee would be well aware of their visa status, the expiration, what they need to do to update their records. They are not always. And as a legal matter, it's the employer's responsibility to track that. So what our suggestion is here is when you have somebody who's in the United States in temporary status, and I differentiate that from somebody with a green card, I'll talk about that in just a sec, but somebody in temporary status, some kind of a visa, an OPT student, or a STEM extension student, you should you should calendar the expiration of their status, and you should calendar a reminder maybe 30, 60, 90 days ahead of that date so that you can speak to the person and see whether they are getting their status extended, or whether they need your help to discuss options in that regard. If the person's status expires, it's on the employer. So you have to track that, unfortunately. Now I mentioned I differentiate that from a green card holder or a permanent resident. It's important to know that even though the current green cards have an expiration on them, the status does not expire. So they changed the rules several years back. They were having employers update and get a new green card from the employee when the card expired. They have changed that to say the employer should not and may not ask the employee to present their new green card. The status continues. So just think about the green card holders like U.S. citizens rather than like people here in temporary status. I think we're about out of time. I'll just mention one tiny exception to that rule, and that's if somebody has a temporary green card stamp in their passport, which is usually good for 1 year. So it's only the folks that have actually gotten their official green card ID that you do not re-verify. Happy to answer any questions. Thanks so much. Bye-bye.